Good morning. It is Monday, December the 3rd, and this is The Drill. Thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America today, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. This is the show for the butchers, the bakers, and the candlestick makers, and for the people that listen to Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, etc., but think that Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity could do better. Over the weekend, I believe it was Saturday night, former President George H.W. Bush passed away. And I did not agree with him a lot politically, but as far as I wanted to make some statement about his person as far as I knew it. He wasn't a friend or a relative or anything. I wasn't close to him at all. But I mean, just from what I observed as a voter and taxpayer, that he seemed to be a very good man. That from all outward appearances, that he led a happy life. It's true, as Aristotle claimed, that everybody is searching for happiness and having a happy life. It seems to me that George H.W. Bush had a happy life. Also, that he was a good man. He was married to the same woman for decades throughout his life. He didn't stray. He didn't get divorced. And he was a good father. And you can tell because he raised two governors, and one of those governors ended up becoming the 43rd president of the United States. So, George H.W. Bush, Godspeed, and God bless you. And when I come back, the Ayn Rand lexicon. Thank you very much. And I'm reading for the Ayn Rand lexicon. She deals with concepts, and I like to read from this to remind myself and others about the fact that there's difference between words and concepts. Words are arbitrary sensible signs with meanings imposed on them by convention, but concepts are not. And today's concept is credit. In all its countless variations and applications, credit means money, i.e., unconsumed goods, loaned by one productive person or group to another to be repaid out of future production. Even the credit extended for a consumption purpose, such as the purchase of an automobile, is based on the productive record and prospects of the borrower. Credit is not a magic piece of paper that reverses cause and effect and transforms consumption into a source of production. All credit transactions are contractual agreements. A credit transaction is any exchange which involves a passage of time between the payment and the receipt of goods or services. This includes the vast majority of economic transactions in a complex industrial society. So, couldn't have said it better myself. And when I come back, I'm going to be reading from the 10 books that screwed up the world and 5 that didn't help. Thank you very much. I didn't get to read from this one last week because I was reading from some new ones. Let me see where we're at here. Rousseau. Okay, so we're reading about Rousseau. Let's see where we're at here. Let's see here we go. So where I stopped is right about here. As civil society is based on injustice and law is merely a tool for the rich to keep their riches, then rebellion of the have-nots is always justified. And this is what the author is claiming that Rousseau is talking about. Then they have nothing to lose but their chains. Voila, the French Revolution, and we are also back to Marx. Let us count up the evils we should lay at Rousseau's door with his discourse on the origin and foundations of inequality among men. We have seen the connections to Marx, so we'll put off until the next chapter a further discussion of the evils of Marxism. But paving the way for the juggernaut of communism is not Rousseau's only evil. Rousseau corrupted our imagination in a very profound way. Much of how we act, what we desire, what we consider true and false, real and unreal, is formed according to an image we have of what we think human beings really are and what we believe our place in nature to be. If we imagine ourselves to be truly at home in a dense, primeval forest, we shall never be at home anywhere else. If we imagine that sexual paradise consists in the carefree satisfaction of any sexual whim, then marriage and sexual morality will seem unnatural fetters on our desires. If we think that heaven on earth would be happy isolation, then, to quote French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, hell is other people. We moderns live in no small part within Rousseau's imagination. To put it another way, we might say we have been made in the image of Rousseau. Modern man has discarded the idea that he is fashioned in the image of God, that he is to love his wife as himself, and that he should regard his children as precious miracles bearing his and his wife's image. Instead, he accepts Rousseau's myth that he is a man-animal who would be happier if he left women with the same careless conscience as a rutting beast of the field, cast his children behind him to be tended by chance, and spent his lives on his own satisfactions, living a life of pure sensations: beer, sports, television, movies, video games, iPods, the internet, sex, sleep. This is no harmless man-animal. It is a sad truth that human beings remake their societies according to the image of humanity they fashion for themselves. And so it is that no accident that modern man-animals troll for sexual prey, convincing women that paradise is sex without strings, and making institutions and laws for the disposal of children. We have become Rousseau's. In other words, a self-fulfilling prophecy. Despite Rousseau's grandiose praise of Roman virtue, he had a string of mistresses, some married, some not. He sired 5 children with one of them. He lived with one for more than 25 years, and he treated her as a mere maid. She delivered his torrid letters to other mistresses. Rousseau abandoned all 5 children to a foundling home where the conditions were so deplorable that their deaths were all but certain. What moral struggle did he undergo? In his own words, describing the first abandonment, he seems to undergo no more struggle than his fictional man-animal. Quote, I made up my mind cheerfully and without the least scruples, and the only ones I had to overcome were those of Teresa. I had the greatest difficulty in the world getting her to accept this means of preserving her honor. Her mother, who feared the inconvenience of a brat, came to my aid, and she allowed herself to be overcome. A discreet and trustworthy midwife was chosen, and then Teresa's time came. She was taken there by her mother for the birth. The baby was then deposited by the midwife at the office in a way that was customary. The following year there came the same inconvenience and the same expedients. I didn't reflect any further, and the mother didn't approve any more fully. She groaned, but obeyed. This vicious but nonchalant assault, unquote. She groaned but obeyed, unquote. This vicious but nonchalant assault on parenthood has been repeated too many times by the Rousseaus of our day for us to add any further comment. As with Hobbes, we see again the power of fiction. Rousseau's account of natural man was no more real than Hobbes, but following the same pattern once it became the accepted story of human origins. It thereby exercised the power of the self-fulfilling prophecy. In imagining Rousseau to be right, we have become what Rousseau has imagined. And next one is going to be part 2, 10 big screw-ups, starting with the manifesto of the Communist Party. That as far as Rousseau is concerned, again, this is to illustrate the effect that philosophy has on our society, a real and lasting impact. Philosophy and philosophical theories. Excuse me. So, that, and if you want to defeat ideas, bad ideas, the best way to do it, as Ayn Rand has said, is if you truly want to defeat ideas, you have to dig them out by the roots. And that means you have to look at the philosophical theory that is behind them. Environmental science, all environmental science is skepticism. It's all based on the fiction, the contradiction that no one can know anything with certainty. and therefore we should act superstitiously. So, and big government or having government getting involved in personal decisions is always about determinism, pretending that people have no free will, that they are forced to do what they do by powers beyond their control, and that the government is the ultimate power that will come to their rescue and force people to do the right thing. Usually, or lately, quit smoking or not smoke to begin with. So, when I come back, I'm going to be reading from the Mr. Wiker's other book called The 10 Books That Every Conservative Must Read. Thank you very much. And the 10 books that every conservative must read is the counterpart to the 10 books that screwed up the world and 5 that didn't help. So this particular chapter, we're talking about Aristotle as he considers the father of philosophy. And so this particular part of the chapter is called The Natural Foundation of Political Life. Aristotle opens the politics with an argument implicitly but firmly defined against the sophists, the smart-set moral relativists, the liberals of ancient Greece. The sophists argued that all moral standards are merely artificial, conventional, and relative to the political power structures of society. Against this claim, Aristotle, without ever mentioning sophism by name, an important strategy as it turns out, makes bold to say that the starting point of society is the natural union of male and female. It is the family. From several households arise a village, and from the union of several villages, the city. The family, and by extension the city, quote, belongs among the things that exist by nature, unquote. And from that we can conclude that, quote, that man is by nature a political animal, unquote. We are naturally social, and so we are naturally political. And politics, rightly understood, is not about power, but about acting out our and perfecting our human nature insofar as it is possible. That last proviso keeps Aristotle from being a dangerous utopian, even while it sets a moral standard that pushes us upward. For Aristotle, size is important. The goal of perfecting our human nature means that political life has to fit our nature. A village is too small, a nation is too large. A city, not a sprawling metropolis made of concrete, but a small city surrounded by an agricultural belt, is just right. Why is a city just the right size? A village can provide the necessities of life, but it isn't big enough to allow for the full flowering of our nature, which spills over into art, architecture, theater, music, literature, science, and philosophy. But a nation is too large, too unwieldy and bloated, too filled with vices, too subject to foreign influences. Citizens are too disconnected in a large nation. It is local affection that binds men together naturally. It is knowing our neighbors and their character that makes self-government possible. With Aristotle, we find the conservative disposition that prefers the local to the national and distrusts centralism and bureaucracy. Aristotle also denies the sophistic and liberal idea that society is simply an arrangement, a contract, an agreement among individuals. On the contrary, society is not a contract or an agreement, but arises naturally. It rests not on atomistic individuals, but on the basic building block of the family. He means this quite literally. The sexual desire for reproduction defines us as naturally, fundamentally social. We desire children to create our own natural society. Contra Hillary Clinton, it doesn't take a village to raise a child, or a state pretending to be a village. It takes a father and a mother. The children who come from this most natural of unions go on to marry and have children themselves and help to create a village. As the family trees of the village branch out over time, the village becomes a city. Such is the natural unfolding of human society. Society doesn't rest on some kind of social contract that guarantees abstract rights, but on the natural union of husband and wife that binds the past and present to the future with children. So-called family values conservatism didn't begin with modern evangelicals, and it isn't just one stream of conservative thought. To Aristotle, it would have been the very definition of conservatism, or of politics properly understood and practiced, because the family is the real, incontrovertible, natural origin of our society. This connects directly with another conservative concern, morality. Aristotle argues that morality is not a set of artificial and arbitrary rules, but arises from our natural beginning, and so it, too, is natural. The moral order is there to greet us when we are born. It is present in the natural, moral order of the family, the first society that any of us know. And it is in the family, says Aristotle, that we learn the natural moral law that sets the standard for civil justice. The well-ordered family is a kind of miniature city, or more exactly, a well-ordered society in seed form. In Aristotle's view, legal codes and political schemes should be judged by whether they adhere to or deviate from this natural moral order. But here we must insert a most emphatic note of caution. While the family is the natural origin of society, that does not mean that the city is just one big happy family. The family and the city are distinct and relate as an integral part to a whole that completes it. The whole does not replace the integral part. The city does not replace the family. Aristotle would rightly be horrified at the modern liberal tendency present in both Marxism and liberal progressivism to disintegrate the natural family and contrive to make the state some kind of superfamily in its place. Another note of caution. Aristotle, of course, does not say that all families are well ordered. The family is natural, but the good ordering of the family is not automatic. Just as a garden needs to be well cared for, so does a family. Just as plants need to be pruned, so families need to be pruned of vice, which otherwise distorts their growth. The disordered souls of a father and mother can lead to disordered families, which lead to disordered societies. Bad morality often comes from badly ordered families. The process accelerates when a disordered society reaches back into the family and twists its natural order into unnatural shapes, making the family a morbid, distorted reflection of what it should be. So just as there are good and bad families, there are good and bad governments, a point we'll get into in a minute. But first, we have to deal with the most important objections to Aristotle's starting point. And so the next section of the book is called The Hard Bits of Aristotle's Argument. But that brings us basically to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, I thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.